you out here with the Ravens and a full weekend of watching the Steelers and hating on them and watching the Cowboys get beat and the Seahawks get beat. But it is baseball season at some point around here. We have to take a TO and get back to the Orioles, even if they're really not doing a whole lot. Alan McCallum has been our longtime Oriole historian, baseball insider, and blogger, and he joins us now to discuss all fallout of the Major League Baseball winter meetings, which were held down in D.C., and it felt like the Nationals felt compelled to do something, anything, even if it wasn't very smart, right?
What, in terms of trading Espinosa to open up a space for Trey Turner?
Well, certainly the Nationals were perceived as giving a little bit too much away, right?
Espinosa is a really strong defensive middle infielder. So I certainly see where someone would say, and he's got some pop, but, the 200, 210 batting averages are not what you'd call encouraging. So I can see where someone would say that they gave too much away, but the reality is that they were doing was opening up a spot for a kid that didn't have a place to play. The incumbent in Espinosa was going to be able to say, that's my spot. They had just traded with the White Sox to get the center fielder they were hoping for, and Trey Turner is their shortstop, their long-term shortstop of the future. So I think they made the right decision, particularly since Espinosa started talking and running his mouth at a point when the organization, your long-term organization, although you finally worked your way into a starting role, that's not who you really are. So I think the Nats did the thing they had to do. I don't know if they wanted to do it, but his talking, not so different from Chris Sale, quite frankly, certainly different level of player, but a circumstance that was similar, creating the circumstance that happened. Put them in a situation where they said, okay, it's time to move this guy so that we can make the team stronger from sort of the A list as opposed to having a decent B lister on hand.
All right, man. Well, plenty of activity at the winter meetings. Not a whole lot from the Orioles. I mean, we go Rule 5, and they do this.
Draft.
Well, they do this dance they do every year. This sort of fake. We want to sign Trumbo. We're going to make this 3-year offer that sounds really enormous to Oriole fans, but not so much to Trumbo or his agent, right?
Well, they're frankly right now in the same situation. It sounds like they were in Chris Davis last year, where the player thinks that he's worth something. The organization thinks that he's worth something as well. They don't agree on what that is. And frankly, no one else in baseball agrees with the player either. Chris Davis has value. He didn't have anywhere near the value that he thought he did when he went out into the market. Quite frankly, I think Scott Boras has had that situation with a couple of players, whether it be Chris Davis or Matt Wieters, their value not being what he likes to expound about guys going out into the market. Matt Wieters is finding that out again for the second year in a row, but he doesn't have a qualifying offer to fall back on. But in terms of Mark Trumbo, here's a guy who had his best season in an Orioles uniform in Camden Yards with a short porch, in a lineup where you really couldn't pitch around anybody. You could pitch to anybody on any given night and strike them out, but you can't pitch around anybody to get to the next guy, because the next guy can hit a 2-run homer as opposed to a solo shot. And that worked for him for one season.
Now, what is that worth in the open market? That's what we're going to find out, right? I mean, we found that number out for Cruz. We found that number out for Markakis. We found that number out for Chris Davis. We found out what it wasn't last year, right? So it is swimming in sort of different kind of waters, especially when you got a guy that you really don't want to give a glove to anywhere, right?
Well, there are a couple of things. I mean, you mentioned Nelson Cruz. Nelson Cruz had done some version of what he'd done with the Orioles before. And it gotten better now. He certainly had the PED history just recently before they signed him in 2014. But his numbers had spoken to him being a better hitter. Nick Markakis, in an age where on base and how you address as a hitter is worth something in the market. He got probably more. I think we all agree he probably got more than he was worth. But there were some previous numbers to back that up. Mark Trumbo has been a 240. 28 to 30 some odd home run, usually low 30s, in his career. And as I said, the combination of the lineup he was in and Camden Yards probably really helped him. And I don't know that but he's not a great hitter. He doesn't have on base or quality at bats to fall back on. So,
well, certainly nothing you want to pay in 2019 for right now, right?
Right. If Nelson Cruz, you can translate him in theory going to Seattle and continuing to put up numbers. You can't do that with Mark Trumbo, and quite frankly, Seattle knows that because he was already there. He's played in enough parks, some hitter-friendly like Arizona, and some pitcher-friendly like Seattle, where people pretty much know what he looks like. Not every place is Camden Yards, and not everybody has a home run lineup like the Orioles. So, not only does his body of work speak to it, but he's been around the league enough that people sort of know what he is. Good teammate. A nice complimentary piece. He's a complimentary piece that had a big year. That's what he is, and he's trying to cash in on it. I don't know if anybody would blame him, but the reality is,
I think the Orioles might have been a little crazy for offering him what they offered him, but I don't know. He didn't take it. He feels like the market's going to be higher, and I'm quite frankly kind of shocked that they want him to that sort of level. But I'm kind of shocked that Chris Davis has got the amount of cake on that contract that he has at this point, and I don't know that it's a good thing. And I don't know that when we saw what happened last week with the Chris Sale deal and the young players going to Chicago and the Red Sox loading up and spending money, and the Yankees are saving up to go after Machado or to go after Britton or to go after, maybe it's time to deal Zach Britton. The Rockies are calling about Kevin Gausman this week. So, there's things happening, but it doesn't feel like Duquette's enabled to do anything massive. You know what I mean? Like crazy, like deal off Adam Jones for something at this point. Or, I don't know. I'm not saying they should or shouldn't do anything, but it does feel like they're less inclined to do anything. That they'll be the last ones doing anything where we send out a WNST text and you're like, wow, I don't believe that's a pretty bold move that they traded that guy or signed that guy or allowed that guy to walk. I have a feeling they'll go to the end with Britton, they'll go to the end with Machado, and they'll wind up getting nothing for him, or they'll wind up having to give Machado $380 million at some point, right?
So, Mark Trumbo, Chris Davis, the clear difference between them is that Chris Davis had been here for 4 full seasons before he got that contract, and he'd done some special things. In 2012, his last month of the season really propelled them offensively into the postseason. He hit some crazy home runs. The rest of the year, he was up and down. And in 2013, he had a massive season. I don't know if somebody can disagree with that. In 2015, he had another really quality season. Maybe not showing up in batting average per se, but certainly more consistent than he'd been in the year before. So he's done some special things. Mark Trumbo, it seems to me that he's a buck guy, and starting to sort of put a profile together what that is. Good teammate, do anything for the club. But I'm sorry, Ness, he's just not worth that money. And I'll say it again: you're gonna clog your lineup up again and your roster with guys that strike out a ton, don't get on base, hit home run, and they need something different than that. And they need space to work in their young players if they believe in them at all. But in terms of doing anything, so we've heard the name Wellington Castillo a lot. And what I know about Wellington Castillo, tell me if this sounds familiar, is that he's a mediocre defensive catcher who hits who can hit home runs and doesn't do much else offensively. We've heard this theme before. I think that this is a team that right now, you look at the teams like the Red Sox and the Nationals, and the Nationals had a good long run of losing, but they're 5 or 6 years into being a good ball club now, and their farm system is still producing talent. I recognize that between a couple of runs of success here, the Red Sox have finished in the bottom of the division here probably 2-3 times in the last 5 years. But that said, they'd had a tremendous run of success prior to that, and yet their farm system continues to pump out talent. How do they do that? That's the question. The Dodgers are a team who they've won the division a few times here now, but they've never been awful, and they continue to pump out talent. Well, the Orioles farm system doesn't do that. And at this point, Duquette is 5 years into this thing, enough time for the first run of his young talent to start presenting itself. And all you have really to show for it, Dylan Bundy showed some positives last year. Hunter Harvey can't stay healthy. And offensively, they're trying to block the one guy that you would have some hope for here if they sign Trumbo, and that their catcher Francisco isn't ready for prime time. It seems to be the case. I mean, the deals that went down in the winter meetings were largely done by teams that either needed young talent or had a surplus of young talent and were ready to win.
Well, that's how the Nationals could give away the farm on Adam Eaton, and certainly, the Chris Sale deal for the Red Sox and giving away their all-world prospect to try to go and win. And, the Red Sox have really separated themselves here as far as what they're going to go to spring training with. They're not going to go as the favorites just, on paper. They're going to go on reality of what they had last year, what they're bringing back, losing Big Papi, all of that stuff. They're going to be a massive favorite in the division, and I don't think the Yankees are going to be real far off, and I don't think the Yankees are done. I think the Yankees will wind up spending some money around the edges to make the ball club better before opening day.
The Red Sox, I said this to you probably about 2 months from now last year, a little before spring training finished, where I told you the last few years everyone predicted the Red Sox to be the best team in the division, and they fell short, but that they had a chance to be that when it was all said and done, and beat by the end of 2016 because they had the best farm system. Well, this year going into it, they are the best team in the division. They might be the best team in baseball on paper. Even with the loss of Big Papi, you're talking about a largely young offensive club, fairly inexpensive at this point on the offensive side. Pitching's pretty expensive. That has the sky as the limit for what they can do with more in their farm system. The Yankees are loaded up right now with young talent, and as you said, they still have money. This leads me to the thing. We've debated this a lot. I do not believe that Dan Duquette is an effective general manager. I'm not going to tell you he's horrible. They've been to the postseason 3 of the last 5 years, so that would be a ludicrous thing to say. But an effective general manager has built his farm system up to the point where he has some talent to either bring up to the major league level to help, or to trade to bring in something else. Makes moves in decisive, active fashion to improve his ball club, or goes out and finds quality bargains. I believe that the last 5 seasons of Oriole baseball and the success that we've seen, or at least not losing in 2 of them, are based on 3 major things. The first thing is Andy McPhail and the talent that he brought into this organization over his time as the head of baseball operations. The second thing is Dan Duquette's first full year as general manager in 2012, when he did an impeccable job of finding talent both from the pitching standpoint and guys that he could work up and down the farm system between the AAA and the major leagues, basically, to keep his roster flexible. And it really helped propel the team, guys like Chen and Gonzalez and the like. And then the third element is Buck Showalter and his ability to manage talent and get the most out of a roster.
Well, and really manage pitching, right? And sleeping guys out, East Coast, West Coast, making sure that he always has a fresh arm, and making sure that it's not about the 10, 11, 12, 13 guys they have at any given time on the airplane, but the other 3 or 4 guys that he can shuttle in when he needs to. And when the rain games catch up and the doubleheaders start happening and the pulled hamstrings and the this and the that and wives having babies and all the sort of things that happen in the middle of June and July, right?
And Buck does that as well as anybody. And it has disguised the reality that Duquette has done little to nothing since the end of that 2012 season to make this ball club viable, particularly.
Well, he did try to leave at one point, right? He did try to go to Toronto, so he was trying to help us out there.
He brought. I give him credit for Brad Brock because he got him, and nobody basically knew who he was. And he traded with Houston to bring in a pitcher who had one really good season for the Orioles that didn't cost him a ton. So I give him credit for those things beyond that. But I asked you questions. Name me an offensive player that has been here for more than one season, other than the guys that were already here in one fashion that have had an impact on the club. Name me a guy that Duquette has traded for that has continued to be with this ball club.
I'll give you a guy he traded that had impact. How about Jake Arrieta?
Again, I say, don't get me started.
Well, I mean, it's he's got to own that, dude, right? I mean,
absolutely.
You got to own that. The whole organization, everybody owns that.
Zach Davies had a really quality rookie season for the Milwaukee Brewers last year, and he was given away for Gerardo Parra. They traded for Steve Pierce last year, a guy they could have had. And again, all these players that they bring in and they don't keep, which means they're taking things out of the farm system. And some of those players have turned out to be pretty good.
Well,
and in turn,
don't forget flipping draft picks too. Throw that in there too while we're at it.
You're leading me to what I'm saying. That part of his job is to enhance his farm system, at least to the point where the only pieces he could trade are players that they need to help the Major League team. And if they trade them, the Major League team is going to collapse. And we don't know that. So they have no opportunity to make moves within trade. They have they don't spend money in these situations, and they don't even on big price tag players, and they're continuing not to move. Why wouldn't you throw money to take a look at a Ben Revere? Why wouldn't you look at a Steve Pierce, who is the super, again, who you keep bringing back in? His $6 million is just, in baseball terms, it's just not that much money. To be a super utility guy and have at-bats against lefties. I mean, one of the major indictments about the Orioles last year is that this is a predominantly right-handed team with big power, had horrible numbers against left-handed pitching. Now, I don't throw that at Duquette's feet, but my point is that if you look at the deficiencies of your club, you've got to go out and try to address them. I'm happy that they're still talking about Michael Bourne. As I said to you last week, I think it makes no sense to have Mark Trumbo for the price tag, clog up your lineup, and overpay for a guy who's not worth the money. Basically bidding against yourself the exact same way they did with Chris Davis last year. I think Pedro Alvarez is a much better fit. I think he's going to give you much better at bats. And if they gave him a chance to play, I think they'd find he's a better hitter than Mark Trumbo is long term. And he would cost far less, and they would have to sign him for far less years right now. There are ways to help. You have yet to hear me talk about them going after a big ticket item, because I realize that that's not in their ballywick right now. But there are moves that this club and Dan Duquette could go out and do right now that would not break the bank, that he could have done a week ago, 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago to help the club, knowing that your farm system is going to hinder you from making deals you would like to be able to make, and see clubs that are already rich and have collateral with which to make themselves even better. He can't do that. And a lot of that is about his inefficiency and his missing on players and not being able to see the big picture within his own organization.
Well, they draft every year. At some point, you got to do better for me than Chance Cisco is not ready, right? So, Alan, we will continue to throw this thing around and talk more about the Red Sox and more about baseball as I'm sure something's right around the corner here, right?
I believe that the Orioles will have made a couple of moves by the time we get, let's say, mid-January. I don't know if anything's going to happen before that. And I'm sure that he'll have some significant player that falls through the cracks for this last year of losing a draft pick through the qualifying off by way of the qualifying offer. Someone might very well fall to the Orioles. I'm not sure if it'll be someone they want, but that could happen. So I wouldn't say there'll be a Christmas present wrapped under the tree, but probably sometime within a couple of weeks of inauguration.
Well, hey, they're not raising ticket prices. What more can you ask for? Alan McCallum can be reached, Alan at WNST.net. We are in preparation for all things Ravens as well. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.